Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Still not Rachel V. Hill, but also not Will Peterson today. It is Jake Shapiro alongside DMac. Because kids, is there anything particular that's making you say because kids today, DMac?
No, this is just the next one up in the coffee arsenal. So because kids, but Jake, any kids in your future?
Probably at least 5 years out, 4 or 5 years out. My wife's 3 years younger than me, so we've got plenty of 20s left in our leeway. I don't. I'm going to one of my best friends is having a 30th birthday party next weekend, and I'm like, oh my God, I am so old.
How will you, once that blessed day arrives and you want to tell the world, how will you do the my wife is pregnant announcement?
I'll probably put her in like a pool type thing in black and white.
Okay.
Very shadowy, put her towards the back. And then have her rub her tummy to some Chris Brown.
We'll leave it there. I mean, I don't want to be a jerk, but that's kind of been done. Yeah,
now that I think about it, it has. But DMac, the thing is, I'm fortunate enough to have a wife who loves sports and is in on all the Denver sports jokes. I was saying to you the other day, I think the Halloween costume of the year would be Barbie and Jared Bednar as Ken from the Mark Kisler column.
Yes.
So we're working on all of these things.
Man, that is funny, no doubt about it. But boy, oh boy, I mean, that is gonna, you're assuming a lot. I get it. I mean, I get it. I'm laughing at it. But how many people are, you're giving a lot of credit to Mark Kisler's readers, I guess.
I worked at the Denver Post and I saw those metrics. Mark Kisler has a lot of readers.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You should recap what Mark wrote.
So this was the summer of last year, going like 2 weeks before the Avs won the Cup. I think it was when they never trailed in the series. So it was like 1-1 against St. Louis. And he called Jared Bednar a Ken, that he was not useful for anything, that he did not have the courage that it took to win a Stanley Cup. Obviously, there's some implication about what Ken has and does not have. And it was very, 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 I think, hurtful if I was just anyone. Like, that was not a nice column. And of course, I think the Avs lost like 1 or 2 more games in the entire Stanley Cup playoffs as they went to win the championship.
I definitely like Mark Kiz, no doubt about it. I do consider him a friend. I was standing next to him yesterday at camp, chopping it up. I like Kiz. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I'll just keep it real. I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people who are doubting Jared Bednar and the Avalanche, I guess they had to eat a certain amount of crow. The same for Michael Malone. I mean, there was a method to the madness, and it worked out for both guys in different years. And I don't know. I didn't really get it in the first place, but I do like Kiz. I think he's a cool dude, and I like reading his stuff, even if I don't agree with everything. And I'm sure he doesn't agree with everything I say either. But it was like, wow, Jared Bednar's a Ken doll. That's just not my perception from being around him for a lot over the past couple of years. I mean, Bednar to me is, there's nothing wrong with being Ken, as we learned in the musical manifestation of the Barbie movie. I'm just Ken, and there's nothing wrong with being yourself. I guess that was the big lesson of Ken. But to say that Jared's like the stereotypical Ken, I'll use another Barbie reference here, is kind of preposterous. He's very in tune with his athletes and his system and how he wants to do things. He's very much in control. And the thing that he couldn't control, unfortunately, that doomed them, I think, at the end of the day last year was Val Nichushkin, who It's funny about Val because you and I knew a lot of stuff about Val like that night. And it does feel like the vast majority of things, Jake, we knew about Nichushkin have played themselves out and proven to be true. So.
Yeah, still waiting on some stuff to be released that me and you are kind of mum on still. The interesting part, I think, with the Avs is like they were definitely not as good this year as they were last year. Their margin for error was much slimmer, but they really did have a legitimate shot to win, and they were playing good hockey before the stuff happened. I'm not going to say they were the favorites to repeat, but you look at the Stanley Cup odds right now, and they're at the top of the charts again. Like I guess I just stole the line from the sideboard there, but they're right there at the top of the odds makers. So I'm excited for this Avs season. I am a little bit worried that they may have missed their window because it is really hard 2 years later to come back. But we've seen the Tampa Bay Lightning do it in recent years. We've seen the Chicago Blackhawks do it in recent years. So maybe it is one of those things in hockey that it's nearly impossible to repeat, but you can do it every other year. You just worry at a certain point here soon, Nathan MacKinnon is the highest paid player in the NHL. It's really hard to build a team, even with someone as supremely good as Nathan MacKinnon, with someone making that much money as relative to your salary cap.
Well, when you have 3 players in the top 10 in the NHL, which I do believe they have with McKinnon, Rantanen, and Makar, they have a championship pedigree coach with Bednar, and they have a upgrade in goalie with Georgiev over Darcy Kemper. And then you throw in, Taves is probably a top 20 guy, certainly top 50. Byram is an up-and-coming player. You're going to get Josh Manson back, hopefully healthier. I think your blue line is going to be better, stronger, barring any injury. And then you just have more size and everything else that you've added. So, all right, I'm hopeful. And you got some solid rest. Nobody wanted to see them go out in the first round, especially on a 7th game at home. That sucks. But the upside of it, Jake, is if you're going to go out, if that's going to happen, you may as well get as much rest as you possibly can. And the Avalanche have had that. So that's coming right around the corner as is the Nuggets, but I'm sure we'll get to all that coming up here.
Yeah. And we've talked about Hockey Ken. And yes, we are live, Troy B, today. We are live. I want to talk a little bit about football, Ken. And you had the Because Kids mug. What have we learned about Sean Payton? Is he a young guys coach? Is he a coach of veterans? Does he prefer something like with Michael Malone? It's very obvious that he wants to have veterans that he can rely on. It was a huge revelation and breakthrough for him, I think, to trust Christian Brown that much. I think we learned some things yesterday in the depth chart, but what have you learned so far about Sean Payton going to training camp practices in about the 6 months he's been the head coach at everything?
Well, I see a lot of similarities between Sean Payton and Gary Kubiak. A lot. They're both on the offensive side of the ball. They're both from Texas. They both have a very confident way in which they handle themselves and a very good sense of self. They know what they want, and they know how to communicate it. The one little quirky part about Kubiak, he was sometimes accused of being a little bit too distant from his players. Well, I think Payton is kind of like that too, to be honest. I think he's going to let his coaches coach, and he's going to be the supreme leader, the general, kind of up on high. So I don't know if Kubiak will make a ton of super close relationships with his players. I think he's going to trust his assistant coaches to do that. And I actually think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's hard to compare it to basketball because, it's just so intimate. I mean, there's just so few dudes. I mean, there's almost as many, maybe more coaches than players on a basketball team. And there's a lot of coaches in football, but it's not quite like that. But I am such a fan so far of the way Sean Payton is doing what he's doing. I think some of the media restrictions are a bit extreme, but not a big deal. Seriously, not a big deal. And if it's about getting your team to focus more and about sending lessons that, hey, just because we did things one way, that doesn't mean how we're going to do things now. I mean, if there was ever a team to do that with, it's this Broncos team. So I can't be upset with that. The ticketing system on the Hill, boy, was I wrong about that. That thing has worked beautifully. and there's only 3 more open practices to the public. I think the team is focused, and the offense is getting better and better and better. Everything, though, in Jake comes down to, unfortunately, injuries because of the way you play players. One of the craziest cliches is next man up. And I'd say, well, it's the next man up if the next man's making $10 million, like the guy that just went down. I mean, there's a reason why one guy is just hanging on by his fingernails and another guy is making $18 million a year. So the next man up thing is, it's I guess you'd like it to be true, but there's a reason why there's a disparity in pay, and that's because of talent. So that's a reality. However, that being said, what a pretty cool day yesterday to see Courtland Sutton, who is that dude. That dude is a dude. I mean, that dude doesn't miss arm day, doesn't miss back day, doesn't miss leg day. Jake, I've never seen Courtland Sutton as yoked up and as fit as he is right now.
We're going to talk about Courtland Sutton in a second. I wanted to hold on to that one. But I did want to mention something on the depth chart. It's funny because we're texting in the denversports.com group chat yesterday when the depth chart gets released, and we're like, whoa, what a couple surprises. And Mace is like, this is a surprise. This is a surprise. So I write a story on denversports.com, which you can check out, which I wrote about all of our surprises. And then I set my computer down in the afternoon, went for a little bike ride, come back, and Mace writes a column. Why the depth chart being released doesn't really mean anything. I'm like, dude, you set me up. Like, come on, man. But no, I think he does make a good point. It is a pencil chart. It is unofficial, but I did find it fascinating that Adam Troutman is the first tight end. Greg Dulcich is the second tight end, because that is a Sean Payton versus General Payton vibe right there. George Payton, Sean Payton, little standoff. And Albert Okwuegbunam, who Jerry Rosberg loved, is still 5th on the depth chart and is probably not going to get on the field. So that was a little interesting one at tight end, DMac.
The tight end, and Sean Payton did talk about it, and I'll give him some grace on that, because the usage of tight ends really depends on, what offensive package and scheme that you're running at that time. So, and I've always been it's weird about the word starter in certain positions. Your offensive linemen are your offensive linemen, your quarterback's your quarterback. But 1st and 10 from the 25, Jake, is a different package than 3rd and 6 from the 50. So there's a bunch of other positions that, I don't know if you're a starter or whatever, depth chart. And what Sean Payton said is, well, you should really look at snaps at the end of the day, not where they are in the depth chart. So I like that. That makes sense to me. We've always done that. There was a moment of ridiculousness last year when we asked Nathaniel Hackett about Albert Okwuegbunam, and he was like, well, he's coming along well. And Albert O had 1 snap in the game. It's like, well, soon to be 0 snaps. But, you can't say that a guy is progressing well when he had 1 snap in a game. I think Albert O is on the endangered list here. And I think the depth chart is a reflection of it. So this is really interesting. At the tight end position, there's certain things that I don't know if it really matters. Troutman, Dulcich, Manhurst. They're all going to be used. But when you put Albert O last on the depth chart, Jay, come on. That is definitely a message sent. Also a message sent that Montrell Washington, who was, Dwayne Stukes' favorite guy, and Hackett, I guess, is number 2 in punt return and kick return, and also buried like the 5th string wide receiver, despite having a really good camp. It tells you where their thinking is with Montrell Washington, too. So those are 2 draft picks of George Payton, 2 draft picks of George Payton's that I think are both at risk of even making the team.
Yeah, I think it's fairly obvious based on the depth chart that Montrell Washington, especially because he's had a good camp, is going to try to get snuck through to the practice squad. I think that's fairly obvious. I also thought that still there's a competition at kicker, which the Broncos have not had in nearly a decade, even though they have some good options. That's a little bit interesting. Brandon Johnson being the second wide receiver, but also overall, the fact that they're releasing their depth chart in 21 personnel, I know you're talking about the snaps, and 21 personnel, for those who do not know, it's just 2 running backs, 1 tight end. We don't need to be all fancy and talk about football things like you guys don't know. But it's just who in the NFL is running their base offense out of 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 2 wide receivers? And my question to you is, DMac, do you expect that to actually be the primary formation the Broncos run on offense as you talk about them dumbing down the offense and making it a little bit more simpler for us? Or are they going to mix it up and do 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and have 3 wide receivers? Because most teams have 3 wide receivers on the field primarily right now in the NFL.
Oh, I think they'll mix it up. But they may be one of the only teams in the NFL, Jake, that either runs more than 50% run to pass or darn near close. And if they don't run more than 50% run to pass, it may be because it's like those throwing handoffs. You throw the ball in the backfield or little swing pass. You know what I'm saying? Like
the shovel passes. Like the shovel passes in the screens. Yes.
Yeah, it's a virtual handoff. I mean, there's not a lot of you got to kind of divvy that up. So I think if you include that, the Broncos would clearly be this year more run to pass. But every team has to mix it up because the defenses are so much better, scouting's so much better, film is so much better. You just can't be stagnant. However, that being said, you can't be overly complicated too, Jake. And that was a huge mistake. You will be able to do more things, say, after the bye week than you do before the bye week. So you've got to be able to learn in chunks. And I think what Hackett did, and was a huge mistake, is they try to do everything all at once. It's like, well, in weeks 1 through 3, we've got to win this way. We may have some flexibility weeks 4 through 7. And once we get to the bye week, which is actually in week 9, and then we got to play the Bills on the road, hey, that's a fair time to say, all right, that's enough time that we've got everything. So you may see a different system towards the back half of the season. I love how Sean Payton's cutting things up, dividing things, installing things in very logical ways. I'll give you a specific example. He said 2-minute drive. We're going to do that a lot. And I'm like, yeah, it's just like a hockey team practices the power play and penalty kill, Jake. Right. Every practice, every pregame skate. So I imagine the Broncos will practice 2-minute drill the vast majority of their practices, because every half ends in a 2-minute drill, offense or defense, and a lot of games end in the same sort of fashion. And he pointed out how many times you actually run goal line. And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't really thought of it. He goes, maybe like a dozen or so times a year. So we're going to practice it, but it's not going to be as high of a priority. And sure enough, Jake, they have not run goal line one time in training camp. I'm sure they will, but they're going to do it in proportion of how you need to practice things. Jake, I love this. I love this beyond belief. This is the baseball guy inside of me that says just break things down to what matters and what doesn't matter. So I love it.
Well, I was about to say that. There's a concept in baseball called leverage. You're at bat with 2 outs in the 3rd inning with nobody on. Is a low leverage situation. Whatever you do in that situation probably is not going to affect the outcome of the game. Bases loaded in the 8th inning with 1 out, that is a high leverage situation. And if you think about it in football, like you said, there is a 2-minute drill for either team in a game almost every week, if not twice. So why wouldn't you make the most of that situation when it has such a swinging impact on the game? And, I disagree with you on the goal line a little bit. Yeah, the goal line's only going to be used 12 times, but it is also a pretty high leverage situation because of the fact you are either scoring or not. But I guess you could say, hey, at the very least, we're going to get 3 here. So if you're going to...
Yeah, but let me talk about goal line real quick. And let me point out the Philadelphia Eagles. They found a way to run a goal line. It's basically a rugby formation, and that's that.
Did that get outlawed, by the way? Did that get outlawed?
I don't think so. Yeah. I know there was discussion. And some of our viewers here would probably know better, but I don't think so. So you figured it out. Do it. You're supposed to not be able to push the guy in front of you, but that's like, that is such a hard penalty to call. And I don't know how they would rule it out. But that's it. We need a yard. We're going to line up basically like an arrowhead, and we're just going to move forward. And, that's going to work most of the time. And your need to practice that a lot is limited, and likely you'll get your reps in real time. Let me tell you a really quick story about me and baseball coaching when it comes to like football. And I love coaching middle school kids. Everybody kind of ignores middle school kids, but they're my favorite kids to coach. The little guys that just don't know how to do anything, it's a little rough. I'm not going to lie. And then the high school kids are just, they get beyond me in my coaching real quick. I love the middle school kids. So what I've done with 9, 10, 11-year-olds, and you have one of these, travel baseball teams or a little league team or whoever you have. Well, Jake, everybody wants to play, so you only have 11 or 12 kids on a team. The most important thing is everybody can pitch. But how many times have you gone out to a little kid's practice and nobody ever pitches and they don't make it a priority? Also, what else is fundamental to baseball? Catching and throwing. So how many teams do you see? So 2 things. And this is how I've coached effective teams over the years. And this is how I would turn any bad team into a good team within a week. We would start every practice. You just get the kids. They got to get energy out, right? So you throw them wiffle balls with the bats because everybody likes to hit. But you don't have to twist any arms to have kids hit. Everybody loves hitting. So you let them get all the, get them all the nerves out and everything by just wiffle balls and then just hitting the circle and And then it's time to practice. And then we focus on catching and throwing as 2 different skills. And I am such like you got to shut your mouth. You got to be quiet. And the coaches are there. They're present for catching and throwing. And I make my coaches hold a couple of baseballs. And if a ball gets away from a kid, I don't have the kid chase it. I have the kid turn around and say, "Coach, ball." And I throw him a ball, and my coach can go chase the ball because I need them to be effective in their catching and throwing. And we work on it quietly, disciplined. And then, Jake, guess what I do after catching and throwing? Pitching for everybody because it's so important. And when it comes to just little kids, Jake, it is simply about throwing strikes. Can you throw strikes? And if you can throw strikes and your fielders can catch and they can throw, Jake, you can win a game 1-0. And that's exactly what we've done. This, to me, makes logical sense. But how many little kids' baseball practices have you gone to, Jake, where the parents drop them off, the kids kind of flop out, and they instantly just start throwing to each other, and it's just haphazard and nobody's paying attention? And that's why my teams beat all those teams, And the best thing I ever won with my group of 12-year-olds, we went to this big tournament in Salt Lake City, and there were 60 travel teams from around the country. And we won the Around the Horn drill. I swear to God, it's one of the greatest things I've ever accomplished with a group of kids. I hit the ball left field to third base to center field to second base to shortstop to right to first to catcher, like a relay throw. And our team, Jake, I'm so proud of it. We won that whole thing over 60 teams. And a lot of teams that would kick the crap out of us in a game. But it's the fundamentals, Jake. And Jake, I'm just telling you with the Broncos, finally, with Sean Payton, we are getting to the fundamentals that make sense. And it's why I'm such a Sean Payton fan right now. And I was able to gloss myself about my baseball coaching. But I'm such a big fan of Sean Payton right now.
I'm loving the 12-year-old baseball rant because no one's seen more 12-year-old baseball, I think, on this planet than me.
Well, then you know what good teams do and what bad teams do. You know it.
Yeah, I spent 10 years umping 12, quite specifically 12-year-old, 10 to 12-year-old baseball. So,
well, you know what I'm talking about. So my teams could throw strikes and field and catch. How's my team going to do in most games?
Yeah, they're going to do well because those are the things that actually matter. And, just being aggressive on the base paths and laying down bunts, like it's really just fundamentals at that point of baseball. And the coach getting out of the way of the kids that know what to do because they were taught by the coach in practice and not during the middle of the game. There are things like that. I did want to focus on one other thing on the depth chart, though, which is just there's only one technical position battle that is still tied today, according to the Broncos depth chart. And that's Caden Stearns and Kareem Jackson. Does it matter who plays there? I'm pretty confident in either guy, honestly. I'm even confident in Turner Yell, but we have found out over the last week that Justin Simmons might be the most important person on the Broncos defense, even if Turner Yell is a decent player.
The impact of, listen, I think the offense is progressing, period. Russ is more confident, more calm. He's getting rid of the ball quicker. But Jake, it cannot be ignored that this offense ascension has come at the same time that Justin Simmons has not been practicing because of a little groin, as Mike Shanahan once said about Al Wilson. And I think Simmons is going to be fine, but there's zero reason he needs to rush back. And I mean, what are we trying to prove here? So it has been very encouraging to see the offense climb up, but it's also very interesting that it's in counterbalance with Simmons not playing. So good for Justin Simmons. First of all, your question is about like Kareem Jackson and Caden Stearns. Stearns did leave practice, and I'm not sure why yesterday, like halfway through. And I did see a situation where there was a communication issue between Patrick Surtain and PJ Locke when it came to who's going to pick up on Courtland Sutton. And it was, like, okay, fine. I mean, it's not the biggest deal in the world. But again, if you have Justin Simmons in that spot, I mean, not only is there probably not a communication issue, I mean, Jake, there might be another interception. I mean, Simmons was having his way, just dialing in on what Russell Wilson was doing. And it really kind of caught my attention, Jake, is Justin Simmons, and this is wild because I would never assume this, but is Justin Simmons the most important player on the Broncos defense? And I'm not trying to put down Patrick Surtain or, Randy Gregory or, whoever's rushing the passer. I mean, everybody's super important, obviously. But Jake, wow, what a difference with and without Justin Simmons over the past 4 days.
Yeah, and it's probably not just what he can do at safety, but the fact that he leads the defense, he makes a lot of the calls. But I've always thought, honestly, that a safety can have a larger overall impact than a corner on a defense, and maybe I'm alone in that theory. But just because of they can play center field, they can be versatile, they can kind of play that linebacker slot, they can drop back, they can double coverage people, they can pick up people. So I've always been a big Justin Simmons fan. It's unfortunate that his entire prime of his career has come at a time where Broncos football has just not mattered. So hopefully it matters this year for Justin in particular. Speaking of guys that have had their primes at times that don't matter, Courtland Sutton, DMac, he looks awesome. Is Courtland back to being a guy who has the potential to being a number one receiver? Because I thought right before he got hurt, he was maybe like 17th best, 16th best receiver in the NFL. He was like budging right up there in terms of the top guys.
Well, I mean, there was debate if he was going to be traded. And when I heard that the Broncos wanted like a second round pick for Courtland Sutton, I was like, well, you got to be kidding me. That's ridiculous. Jake, I figured that the first three receivers would be Tim Patrick, Mims, and Jerry Jeudy on the depth chart with like Sutton at 4. And frankly, maybe even 5, depending on how they were going to use KJ Hamler. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, you got an injury to Tim Patrick. Okay, that sucks. And then what I really couldn't see was Courtland Sutton being in the absolute best shape of his life. And I'm like, who is this guy? And it is beyond impressive. Courtland Sutton looks more like DK Metcalf these days. When I talk about like Russell Wilson has to play amongst the Avengers, Courtland Sutton is Iron Man, dude, or Captain America, or I don't know, pick one. 4, maybe all together. His arms are absolutely huge. He's actually trimmer in the waist, bigger in the chest, bigger in the legs, more explosive, more physical, faster. This is wild. And when I look at Courtland Sutton, I'm like, how is that just not your go-to guy in any situation? To get 100 receptions in a 17-game season, Jake, that's 6 catches a game. I mean, is that crazy that you're going to target Courtland Sutton 8 or 9 times a game to get about 6 catches, or he has some sort of crazy 13, 14 catch sort of game like some of these number one guys do? I'm not trying to rule out Jerry Jeudy, but Jeudy is fast and slick and a great route runner, but he's not physical like Cortland Sutton. I mean, Sutton is on another level. And we saw a great example of it yesterday. And I just blame myself. I guess I was sleeping on it, or he was wearing sleeves down to his wrist or something. But yesterday he wasn't. And you could see by his play, his physical nature, his commitment to get in a different type of crazy shape. This could be an unbelievable year for Cortland Sutton. It could be the best year of his career.
This is interesting because last year there was a lot of hype about him in training camp as well. Towards the end of training camp, people started really talking about his chemistry with Russell Wilson. And then he had an awful year. So I just wonder if this is following a similar pattern, or does he truly look different heading into this year? And the vibe I'm getting is that it's the latter, which if you couple that with the second half production of Jerry Jeudy and what Greg Dulcich maybe can do as a second-year tight end, you're talking about 3 legitimate weapons for Russell Wilson to throw the ball to. And you also add back Javonte Williams, who could be a powerhouse running back towards the end of the season once his knee comes back, maybe to full strength. So you're talking about being amongst the Avengers. Yeah, the Broncos don't have a Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill or one of these guys that's an absolute game breaker. And I don't think any of these guys could be. But could they replicate it in the margins by just having enough of them to be all good enough? And I don't know if the answer is a yes, but I'm starting to feel a lot better about the Broncos offense today, certainly than I did by the 16-point Broncos offense of last year.
Yeah, and I'll give you the secret weapon too. And I agree with everything you just said there, although I do think Sutton has the potential to have Kelce-like sort of games for the Broncos. Maybe not every game, but like, who is going to guard this guy? I mean, when Patrick Surtain is having a hard time guarding Cortland Sutton, which he is most days, and Surtain is unbelievable, I mean, what is it going to be like going against less than Surtain? That being said, I got another name for you in terms of the secret weapon department, and that's Michael Burton, the fullback, number 20. He's a 9-year pro with experience with Sean Payton, and he's a really good pass catcher. So that is what we have seen a bunch. I mean, just real easy passes. Like, who is going to pick up this guy? And that's a tough one. So you got a guy like Michael Burton who probably, especially in the red zone, when you got to cover everybody else, like you just mentioned, Jake, you got to be responsible for everybody else. And then here's, this little dude out of the backfield. Well, who's on him? And you're not going to stop him from catching the ball because it's going to be short little passes. And all of a sudden he turns around, he's 5'10", 250 pounds, running for the pylon. Well, I mean, again, who's going to stop him in those particular situations out in the flats? It's a really cool, I'm not a big fullback sort of guy, but I've always said if you can find somebody like a Christian McCaffrey, well, sure. And I'm not saying he's Christian McCaffrey because I'm not saying they're going to hand him the ball. So they're going to mix it up a little bit. Their version of Christian McCaffrey is going to be like a combination of like Javonte Williams and, this guy, Michael Burton. And I think Javonte and Perine are both very capable pass catchers, especially Perine out of the backfield. Jake, it does set up well. I'm not going to lie. The only thing that we really don't know and that we're nervous about, rightfully so, is how this offensive line is going to hold up in pass protection. Not run blocking. We're not really concerned about that. It really is pass protection.
Yeah, it's pass protection and the fact that Russ needs to get the ball out and Russ needs to manage his scrambles and also be able to throw over the middle, which was a struggle last year. So I think it's a combination of the offensive line and pass protection and also Russ being a good partner with the offensive line, because you have to keep in mind, nobody was sacked more in the NFL last year than Russell Wilson. And those plays, we saw it, really just kind of killed the Broncos offense. It's really hard to come back from those negative plays, and they happened quite a bit. And when Russ wasn't getting sacked, it felt like there was always an offensive line penalty on drives. So it almost makes sense when you break down which drives and how they occurred, that the Broncos were only scoring 16 to 20 points a game because there were so many problems on offense. So do you think this is a night and day situation where things are really going to be that different going into this year? Or are we going to see, like some of the same issues we've seen for the last year or so?
I think it's going to be night and day. And one of the things that Sean Payton talked about, and I do think it was a subtle dig on Nathaniel Hackett from Hard Knocks the night before, was about getting plays called quickly. And because if you watched Hard Knocks, Hackett was talking about communication, which our friend Matt Smith found a video or made a video. I don't know. I'm sure what he did, but he showed Hackett talking about communication on Hard Knocks, then spliced it in with a bunch of mistakes from the Broncos, including the humiliating, countdown game against the Texans last year, a game that they actually won, but it was humiliating because here's the crowd helping you out. So I don't think it was a big coincidence that Sean Payton wasn't, going into detail about how you actually are supposed to do it. And you've got to have the next play ready to go and even anticipate the next play before the one play is called and how he's going to be delivering it, because you have seen it. You have seen him practice with the clock. You have seen the coaches try to stress the players. You have seen them over and over again stressing, get to the line quickly. They want them to get to the line quickly so you can talk to your quarterback up until there's 15 seconds left in the play clock. And if you dawdle up to the line, even by like 2 seconds, you may lose that opportunity to give yourself an advantage. So again, I love it. I love all these things from Sean Payton. I think it's fantastic. And that's what they're practicing. So by doing that, Jake, it should be like a light switch. It should make a difference instantly. Plus, guess what? Shocking. They're going to practice this crap in preseason games. So I really don't, they need to score a touchdown and they need this, they need that. I don't really care about that. What I care is that they're able to work on communicating and I'll watch that, Jake, more than anything. Are they, whatever the result of the play is, I kind of don't care. Are they communicating effectively, and are they doing things in a pattern that you can replay quickly? And you just didn't know that last year because Hackett didn't play the starters because he was terrified about getting injured. Listen, Jake, injuries happen. It's football. Look at what Tim Patrick did to rip his Achilles. Was that a coaching error? Was that a practice error? It was nothing. It was nothing. You're going to get hurt playing sports every now and then. But you do have to get better at doing the fundamentals of your sport and communicating, getting the plays in, and having Russ just simplify things is huge. So I really don't care. The result of the plays to me is negligible. How they're doing their operation. And if it's not great in the beginning, I won't care about that either. I just want to see it get better as the game goes. And I know those are important reps to have.
Want to touch on this during the show today. 2K doesn't joke. We had a little bit of a, Yeti. Nikola Jokic is like a Yeti in the offseason. It's almost impossible to spot him. It's like, what's Nikola up to? What's Nikola doing? What's the news about Nikola? This year, it's been a little easier, him jumping into rivers and such, because of the fact I think he's become such a celebrity. And yesterday, he was spotted in Manhattan Beach with Colin Cowherd, which was very random. And also, I didn't know he was in America already. And apparently, he likes Los Angeles. And then 2K released their ratings for the year, and Nikola Jokic is not only the highest rated player at 98 overall, which is a very rare rating for 2K players. I'm a huge 2K guy. But there isn't even a guy at 97. There's guys at 96 like Giannis and, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. So DMac, I wanted to tell you about this because I think it's really important, especially for people that are my age or younger. I learned a lot of my sports at the foot of Madden, at the foot of 2K, learned through these video games and who is the best, what these rosters are, how things work. And now a generation of kids are, one, I wrote about this the other day. There's this Chinese guy, number 15 on their U19 team, passing like Nikola Jokic at 7'1". Jokic is now the top player in the video game, and it's not even close who's second. This is the really cool stuff about having a guy who's going to have a generational impact, and it's finally starting to happen with Nikola.
I love it. Let me just get to the Manhattan Beach thing. Huh? Why? What was the purpose? I'm glad Colin Cowherd could have something good happen to him this week, but I don't even get it. Was there a horse race in Los Angeles that he had to be at? I mean, I was stunned by that. First of all, let me just ask you: Do you know why he was in California?
I just Googled really quickly Breeders' Cup, which isn't till November. So I don't know that there's a famous horse race in California. Also, what's interesting is one of the Twitter accounts associated with Cowherd, but not run by Cowherd, said that it was at Colin Cowherd's restaurant, which I didn't know Colin Cowherd owned a restaurant in Manhattan Beach. So apparently Jokic walks into Colin Cowherd's restaurant in Manhattan Beach. And the funniest part about this is when the text hit our group chat at denversports.com, I was like, I have also run into Nikola Jokic in that exact spot.
What?
Well, remember at Santa Monica during the Western Conference Finals against LA, I was telling you about this, that I ran onto him in the pier. So apparently Nikola Jokic just really loves the beach in Southern California. And I cannot figure out for the life of me what he's doing down there. My only answer was, well, training camp for the Nuggets will probably be in San Diego, but that's not going to be for another couple weeks, if not another month. So why is he already here when he clearly just wants to go back to Serbia all season long? And it's developing.
I don't know.
The thing you said, DMac, maybe he really just starting to like America, and he's realizing Denver's home. And also maybe why not just take a little trip to LA? Like all of us do that all the time. So maybe you just want to do that.
Well, the best place for a celebrity to hide is actually amongst a lot of people. And the one place where, sure, he's going to get some looks, and of course he's going to be recognized to a degree. But everywhere he goes in Serbia, everybody stops. I mean, he can't go anywhere in Serbia. Right. He couldn't go anywhere in Colorado either, although I think we're pretty nice here in Colorado. We more or less leave people alone. But he could easily go to California and more or less be left alone. He's recognizable, of course, but it's interesting. Like, he's not LeBron, he's not. Give me somebody else in the NBA that you would know.
Did you see the video of people in Toronto watching LeBron eat from across the street?
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah, he's not. He's.
But the thing is, DMac, he's still 7 foot tall. So it's not it's not even like Jamal Murray could kind of maybe blend in because he's 6'4". It's like, who is this 7 foot tall person? He must be a basketball player.
Well, but he gets that his whole life. So I'm sure tall people in general, I'm sure it's annoying, but I'm sure they're used to that. Listen, I think Jokic could go most places and hide in plain sight for the most part and not be bothered. He obviously likes water, okay? He talked about, on off days in the finals going to his pool. We saw him jumping in a river. He's now at Manhattan Beach. I mean, Jokic obviously likes being around water. So I'm not sure why he was there. I would say this, you forget how much money he really does have. He could easily hire a private jet if he wanted to, or fly first class anytime he wants to get from point A to point B. So maybe traveling around is just not that big of a deal to Nikola Jokic. We probably think about, standing in line and waiting to get called for our Southwest portal. He's just different. So the traveling to me is not that big of a deal. I mean, people with incredible wealth can just travel so easily. We saw Rob Walton at Broncos practice. Again, I don't think he was going through security at DIA. I'm sure he was taking his private car from his private jet at Centennial for the, 1 mile trip down the road. And he could be just up and back for the afternoon, So rich people just live different. That being said, I am surprised he's back in the United States when he doesn't need to be here. But okay, cool, man. I mean, we love Jokic. That's great.
The only thing I can think of, DMac, is Manhattan Beach is really close to Inglewood, and the Cronkies probably live out there and are based out there right now with the Rams practicing and getting ready for their season. So the only thing I could think of is there's something going on with ownership that they wanted him to be a part of. And I agree with you. Travel, not a big deal. The thing I find interesting with Jokic is the locations he is in, not when he is traveling, because let's be honest, this guy travels 50 nights of the year minimum, and he is used to traveling. It's not a big deal for him. And also, like you said, he is making $250 million. He can buy a beachfront property in Manhattan Beach, get on a PJ, get on a helicopter, be back and forth in a couple hours. No big deal.
Yeah. So who knows why it was there. It was a fun picture to see. We all love Jokic. I like his decision to not, it's a tough one for Serbia because he's not playing for Serbia this summer. But, dude, I get it. I totally get it. And we need another run from the Nuggets. So good for Jokic I understand, too, what you're talking about, the video games and how it is wild. If anybody plays a lot of video games or plays fantasy sports, the degree that they know players in whatever league is phenomenal. You just have a better understanding, not only who the players are, but what their real value is. So if you needed any more convincing about how good Jokic is, well, thank you, 2K. I mean, you're confirming the obvious, but we'll take it, and it does signify, Jake, the Nuggets aren't going to take anybody by surprise this year. And the days of saying, oh, they can't do this and they can't do that are clearly over. So it's a new world for the Nuggets. It will be a new world for them. And I'm still bummed about Vlatko. And hopefully that doesn't have a major impact on the team. I'm just bummed because he's a good dude. And you tell me contract-wise, could that be the end for Vlatko with the Nuggets, or is he good?
I think he has one more year left on his deal at a low cost. Speaking of Vlatko, Team USA is taking on Slovenia in the next couple days. So
okay,
I'll wear the USA hat today in an exhibition in Vegas.
And is Luka playing for Slovenia?
Luka is playing for Slovenia, and he got hurt, but he's not seriously hurt in the same game Vlatko did. Someone asked earlier, how does this affect the Nuggets rotation? It affects the Nuggets rotation pretty big. They're going to have to take a chance on either Peyton Watson or Hunter Tyson stepping up. The other thing you mentioned here, DMac, about 2K, I don't, most people don't know this about me, but I'm like a semi-professional 2K player. Like, I've made quite a bit of money playing 2K. I'm very good at 2K. And I told my 2K friends maybe 3-4 years ago, I'm like, this Nikola Jokic guy is the best player in the NBA. So for that to finally happen and for this community to get that, I think it's really fun. It also strikes a nerve with the hoopers and the casual basketball fans that Jokic is finally striking that chord with after he beat the Lakers and won the title that he didn't really do even with the MVPs. It's him finally crossing over into like the mainstream. My impression though right now, and I wrote this column back in March and I talked about this on your show, is you can make a lot of comparisons to last year's Jokic to Jordan in 91. What happens with Jokic next and the Denver Nuggets next compared to Jordan and the Bulls obviously is yet to be seen. But in terms of winning their first title, the doubts, how clearly they were the best player in the league, how those teams had never won a title, and then they win and they have this breakthrough and everything starts to go right. There's a lot of comparisons to be made. And I think right now, the player that Nikola Jokic is, you could make a case that Nikola Jokic's peak is as good, if not better, than any other peak in the NBA's history. We will see how this all plays out. I'm not putting my foot in my mouth on any of it. I'm just leading the runway out and saying we are seeing something special, and it's cool that 2K is recognizing all of this. Speaking of cool and special, we've got the Colorado Buffaloes in Boulder. And is the hype real, DMac? Pat Shurmur, he is talking to the media in moments. He's going to talk about all the incompletions Shedeur Sanders is throwing, I'm sure. But, man, did you see that throw Shedeur Sanders threw the other day? It was like 75 yards on the money into a trash can that was laying on the field. I mean, I'm like, this guy's accuracy. The over-under is still at 3.5 games, DMac. Their schedule is tough as all can be. But you've got Urban Meyer out here talking about how this is a really good football team. And by the way, Urban Meyer works for Fox, and Colorado's first 2 games are on Fox. So I wonder why he said that on Fox. But are you buying any of this with Colorado? Do you think they could actually be any good this year with 85 new players?
Here's what I love. I don't have a dog in the fight. So I talked to like you and James and Matt and Chad and all my great CU friends. And, I wish you nothing but the best. And I've told Rachel, who's a proud CSU Ram, she should be actively rooting against everything CU. She shouldn't be buying into any of it because if you want to look at it objectively, if I'm a Rams fan, what's going on with CU right now is ridiculous. They have been terrible over the years. And you want to talk about hype? I mean, my God. I don't know, man. This has got to be the most hyped team of all time in the history of college football when you put it all together. So is it real? I don't know, Jake. I have no idea if it's real. I haven't spent like a second scouting out what Nebraska has or who's coming back for TCU or I don't know. Give me the rest of they play Arizona State. I barely pay attention to them.
Who's coming back for USC though?
Well, okay, yeah, you got to play Caleb Williams. Jake, is it real? I don't know, man. Here's where I am with college football. I'm into the NFL and the Broncos like freaking nonstop. And then when I take a breath on Saturday, oh, look, CU's on TV. That's the way I am with CU. And I always watch the games knowing virtually nothing. So is it real? I mean, they don't play any preseason games. It's like the Zapruder film with secrecy, when it comes to actually seeing things that happen in practice. I root for CU. I root for CSU. I root for Air Force. There's always an Air Force person in there that gets, annoyed that I don't mention Air Force. But I want the best for all the schools. But asking me, is it real? I mean, it's like asking me, what's happening on the Portugal Stock Exchange right now? If there is a stock exchange in Portugal. Yeah, I don't know. I just threw it out there. So I have no idea. You tell me.
This is why I've set you up for this, DMac. I know virtually as much as possible about Colorado, the University of Colorado, Boulder. I'm probably in the top 5 percentile of knowing about this football program and football team as well. I have no idea. I don't know if they're going to be good. I don't know if they're going to be bad. I lean towards they're going to be bad because if you bet in sports, most of the time the guys lose eventually. Like you're betting against it's one team wins and then the field loses. So it's pretty easy to bet on the field losing.
Here's my guess though, real quick. My guess is they are going to suffer from the same thing I hope the Broncos hash out, and that's communication issues. I think there's obviously a lot of very talented kids there, and there's an all-star selection of coaches. But it's not that long ago where Eric Bieniemy was up in the coach's box at CU yelling so loudly you could hear him next door on the KOA broadcast because they weren't communicating with what they wanted to do. And it is complicated in football and maybe in particular college football, because a lot of it comes at you real fast. So to think that a coach who's never coached at this level, okay, and I'm not saying Deion's not a great coach because he obviously can do so many great things, but he just hasn't done it yet. So how many reps do you need to do it before you're really good at it? And I think they'll be better near the end of the season than they're in the beginning. And I hope everybody just takes a deep breath, when obviously things that you think should go well don't. Hopefully you have the athleticism of like Travis Hunter will just win you the day. But Jake, it's not like they didn't have good athletes at CU over the years. They did.
Yeah, I mean, Laviska Shenault was awesome.
Right.
That's one of them, and they just didn't win with him. But to your point, the way you talk about CU and the way I kind of think about them is, and I always wondered how it would feel to be a fan of one of these teams, like the San Diego Padres or the New York Jets this year, or the Cleveland Browns a couple of years ago, the team that wins the offseason, that has such a good offseason. Those teams never end up playing well or doing well. Like they end up being 500. And you know what? With CU, if they went 500 this year, it would be the biggest victory ever. Like, again, their win total, their over-under is at 3.5. If they won 4 games, DMac, I am running through the streets excited about what the prime era can be. I have them right now maybe winning 2 or 3 games. Like, it's going to be a slog. And I love Hunter. I love Sanders. I have no idea what their depth is. I don't know that their line play is any good. But like you
who
said,
knows?
no one knows because no one knows what TCU has. No one knows what Nebraska has. It's impossible to know about the happenings of college football. What I can tell you, though, DMac, is if the Colorado Buffaloes lose to the Colorado State Rams this year with all of this hype, I'm probably not showing up to work for a few days.
Well, I mean, listen, of course you want to beat Nebraska, okay? You have to. I mean, no matter what happens this year, CU has to beat CSU. I mean, and that game's at Folsom, right?
Yes.
Back where it should be. There was a day 20 years ago where the Rocky Mountain Showdown was really cool. That was a long time ago. And it's been depressing over the years going to a half-empty, Empower Field or whatever it was called at the time. I'm glad it's back on campus. I think it should stay on campus. I've seen CU-CSU. I actually saw CU-CSU at Folsom and CSU won, which was like
Bradley Van Pelt. Let's bring it up. My absolute nightmare. Woo, woo, woo. I hate that game, DMac. It's one
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's one of my 5 most nightmare Jake Shapiro games that just ruins my day every time I hear about it.
All right. I didn't mean to rub it in. I didn't mean to, trust me, I thought CU was going to win that game too.
Me too.
I wasn't there pulling for the Rams. If it, for whatever reason, if it makes you feel better, I do lean more CU than CSU. And that has, brought me a lot of negative comments from CSU people over the years. But I do call myself a poser buff. But I got nothing against CSU. Listen, you got to win that game. And I know you want to talk about annoying. It's me and Mike Evans focused on Syracuse football. That's where we could get annoying. But hey, let me give you this twist real quick. So our guy, Orlando Franklin, just picked up a great part-time job with ESPN.
Yeah, congrats to that's awesome.
It's amazing. And he'll be a color analyst on the ACC network, which is owned by ESPN. His first game in the booth, Syracuse Colgate in the Dome. So, yeah, that's cool, man. So, go Big O and, go Orange. But see, as soon as I bring up Syracuse, it's like eyes glazing over, like, who cares? Rightfully so. But that's college sports, man. College sports, at the end of the day, Jake, college sports is niche. It doesn't represent a collective state or region. It is more tied in to a fan base that went there, or perhaps in some of these smaller towns with big schools, that community. And if you don't come from one of those communities and you didn't go to one of those schools, you don't really give a crap. But everybody, this is the obnoxious part about CU. Everybody at CU thinks everybody cares about CU. It's like obnoxious Cubs fans thinking that everybody loves us.
The thing is, right now, DMac, the CU people are right. Everyone does care about Deion Sanders and what's going to happen with the Colorado Buffaloes this year. It's the one time we have ever been right. And I think a lot of it is people watching, hoping it's a train wreck and they can't look away type deal, but like our numbers indicate on our site, like the things I'm seeing, like everyone is just glued to what this Colorado Buffaloes football program is going to do.
All right.
And we'll see how it goes because.
I'm not going to doubt that. Yeah, that's right. Hopefully I didn't get misinterpreted there. The level of interest and my curiosity is through the roof. I mean, you're right. CU 1000% is must-see TV, and we will all be dialed in to CU probably for the first. I mean, if they start winning, we'll be dialed in the rest of the year. But if not, you got us for at least 6 games no matter what.
I think it's 4 because to start, it's TCU, Colorado State, Nebraska, then USC. And after those 4, then it's Oregon, I guess, is 5. But like if you just get crushed by TCU, you lose to Nebraska, and then it's not fun against CSU, people are going to be out after 3. So there's a potential for it to be 3 or all year. But what happens next is going to be interesting. I've got to run because I got to go hear what Pat Shurmur had to say about the Colorado Buffaloes. What a weird sentence. He is DMac. He'll be back tomorrow with Will Peterson and Andrew Mason as they give you a breakdown on Coffee Break of what they expect to see in preseason game number 1 against the Arizona Cardinals with that horrible field that not even the turf doctor could save for the Super Bowl. We'll see how that goes tomorrow. Make sure to check out denversports.com. We've got a lot of stuff coming through the pipe later today. Thanks for watching Coffee Break, and we will see you tomorrow.
Shoulder.